"The most absurd thing about humans," said Ambassador Krell, swirling his bioluminescent cocktail with a slender appendage, "is how they manage to survive this long without anyone noticing what absolute lunatics they are." The Grand Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous laughter. 500 representatives from across the Orion Arm shifted uncomfortably in their gravity-adjusted seats. I, Zarquel Phi, chief diplomatic correspondent for the Galactic Observer, leaned forward in the press box. This emergency session promised to be the most entertaining disaster I'd covered in my 300-cycle career. Lunatics with nuclear weapons, added Representative Voss from Proxima Centauri, her feathers ruffling dramatically. Lunatics who split the atom before they figured out how to stop killing each other over imaginary borderlines. Ambassador Krell's 12 eyes blinked in sequence. Precisely my point. The humans developed faster than light travel last solar cycle, and within 6 standard months they have managed to offend 37 member species, annihilate 16 non-interference protocols, and introduce something called karaoke to the Andromeda Cultural Exchange. I scribbled furiously on my datapad. The humans had arrived on the galactic stage like a meteor strike, unexpected, chaotic, and leaving everyone wondering what hit them. Their planet, a rather unremarkable blue-green sphere they called Earth, had somehow produced the most bewildering species in known space. Supreme Chancellor Droll tapped his ceremonial staff, bringing the chamber to order. His translucent skin pulsed with stress indicators. Representatives of the Galactic Council. He intoned, voice amplifiers carrying his words to every corner of the massive chamber. "We face an unprecedented situation. For the first time in 7,000 cycles, we must consider invoking Article 7B of the Galactic Charter, the exile of a sentient species." A collective gasp rippled through the assembly. I nearly dropped my datapad. Article 7B hadn't been used since the Krall tried to convert an entire star cluster into a weapon. This was serious, and seriously good for my ratings. "Chancellor," called out Ambassador Trell of the Harmonious Collective, "surely exile is premature. The humans have only just achieved interstellar capability. All species experience growing pains." "Growing pains?" snorted Ambassador Krell. "Is that what we are calling it when they accidentally reprogrammed the Central Library AI to speak exclusively in something called memes? Or when their diplomatic contingent gifted the Hive Queen of Rigel with a jar of honey?" Even I winced at that one. The Rigelians had evolved from insectoid ancestors, and while they'd long since moved beyond hive mentality, presenting their monarch with the regurgitated sustenance of Earth insects was catastrophically tactless. "Let's review the facts," Chancellor Droll continued, activating the central hologram. The timeline of human diplomatic incidents materialized in the air. 6 standard months ago, humans achieved FTL capability. Our welcome delegation made contact. The initial relations seemed promising. The hologram shifted to show the first meeting between council representatives and the humans, a group of eager bipeds in matching blue uniforms, smiling with too many teeth. 3 days later, Droll said dryly, human Ambassador Jones asked the Valerian delegate if the carpet matches the drapes, apparently unaware that Valerians consider their cranial foliage sacred. An innocent misunderstanding. Protested Representative Laweye of New Terra, one of the few council members advocating for humanity. Their translation software was still calibrating. Then explain, countered Representative Voss, why their second diplomatic mission attempted to establish trade relations by challenging the mercantile synod of Betelgeuse to something called beer pong. I couldn't suppress a laugh, earning disapproving glances from nearby journalists. The beer pong incident had been my first major story on humans. The footage of dignified Betelgeusian trade ministers, with their 6 arms and ceremonial robes, reluctantly tossing small spheres into cups of fermented grain liquid, had gone viral across the galactic infonet. The hologram continued cycling through human diplomatic catastrophes. The incident with the Arcturus Ballet, where humans had inexplicably started something called the Wave, the formal dinner with the Saturnine delegation where humans served cheeseburgers. Despite explicit warnings about lactose sensitivities, the truly nightmarish first contact with the telepathic mind-weavers of Tau Ceti, where human representatives had been explicitly instructed to clear their minds but instead collectively focused on something called Baby Shark. "But, Chancellor," said Ambassador Loai, "these are cultural misunderstandings, not malicious acts. Humans are adaptable. They learn quickly. Too quickly," muttered Representative Glix of the Silicon Consciousness. "Their technological advancement curve is almost vertical. They went from combustion engines to quantum computing in less than 200 years. It's unnatural and dangerous," added Ambassador Krell. "They still have active territorial disputes on their home planet, yet they are already establishing colonies in neighboring systems. Their media is saturated with scenarios about conquering other species. They call it entertainment." The chamber erupted into anxious chatter. I noted how the coalition supporting Exile was growing. The mercantile worlds were worried about human economic disruption. The elder species feared their unpredictability. The military alliance was concerned about human aggression. Chancellor Droll raised all four of his hands for silence. "We must acknowledge certain truths about humans. They are resourceful, adaptable, and alarmingly resilient. But they are also impulsive, territorial, and culturally incoherent. Their planet has thousands of languages, hundreds of nations, and dozens of conflicting religions, yet somehow they achieved space travel without resolving these divisions. That's what makes them remarkable," Ambassador Loy argued. "Their diversity drives their innovation, and their conflicts," countered Representative Voss. "They still wage wars over resources their technology could easily synthesize, but they pollute ecosystems they depend on. They created artificial intelligence, then immediately made it write poetry and determine which potential mates they should connect with." I struggled to maintain journalistic neutrality as the debate continued. Humans were, without question, the most entertaining species to join galactic society in my lifetime. Their diplomatic blunders made for excellent copy, but beneath their bumbling exterior there was something unsettling about them. The way they smiled when they didn't understand something, their casual disregard for danger, their bizarre habit of bonding through mutual insults, the fact that they developed spaceflight as competing nations rather than a unified planet. "I call for a formal vote," announced Ambassador Krell finally. "Under Article 7b, I propose the temporary exile of humanity to their home solar system until such time as they demonstrate cultural and political cohesion suitable for galactic integration." Representative Loai jumped to her feet. "At least allow human representatives to address the Council before voting." Chancellor Droll consulted with his advisors, then nodded reluctantly. "The human delegation may speak. Summon Ambassador Jones." The chamber doors parted, but instead of the human diplomatic team, a single junior aide entered. The young human looked nervous, clutching a datapad. "Esteemed representatives," he began awkwardly, "I regret to inform you that Ambassador Jones and the Human Diplomatic Corps unavailable." "Unavailable?" Chancellor Droll's skin flushed with annoyed purple patterns. "This is an emergency session of the Galactic Council." "Yes, well," the human aide cleared his throat. "Upon learning of this session's purpose, Earth's governments convened an emergency meeting of their own. They have, reached a decision." The chamber fell silent. Even I stopped typing. "Humanity acknowledges that our integration into galactic society has been problematic," the aide continued, gaining confidence. "We recognize that our species has cultural and political divisions to resolve. Therefore, before this council could vote, Earth has decided to exile itself." Stunned silence gave way to confused murmuring. I frantically transmitted updates to my editor. "This was unprecedented." "Clarify," demanded Chancellor Droll. "As of 6 standard hours ago, Earth began recalling all human vessels and personnel from Council space," the aide explained. "We are withdrawing completely to our solar system, effective immediately. No exile vote necessary." Ambassador Krell's appendages twitched in confusion. "They are grounding themselves? Voluntarily?" Yes, said the aide. Ambassador Jones asked me to deliver this message. If we are not welcome at the party, we won't crash it. We will have our own party, with blackjack and hookers. The aide winced. I apologize. He insisted I quote verbatim. I stifled a laugh as confusion swept through the chamber. Representative Voss's feathers were practically standing on end. This is irregular, Chancellor Droll said finally, but acceptable. How long does humanity anticipate this self-exile will last? The human aide smiled, that unsettling human smile that never quite reached the eyes. Ambassador Jones said to tell you, check back in 50 years. Things will be different. With that cryptic statement, the aide bowed and departed, leaving 500 of the galaxy's most powerful beings staring at each other in bewilderment. Well, said Ambassador Krell after a long moment, that was unexpectedly reasonable of them. But something in the human smile had unsettled me. I'd spent enough time studying humans to recognize that particular expression. It wasn't submission or acceptance. It was what humans called a poker face. As the council adjourned in confused relief, I couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's rapid acquiescence wasn't surrender at all. It was strategic withdrawal. And as a journalist who'd covered galactic politics for 3 centuries, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. When someone leaves a negotiation smiling after apparently losing everything, it means they know something you don't. Humanity had just been effectively banished from galactic society, and they seemed perfectly fine with it. That should have worried the Council far more than any diplomatic faux pas. I sent my final update to my editor. Humans accept self-exile without protest. Galaxy breathes sigh of relief. This reporter wonders if we will regret it. Little did I know how prophetic those words would prove to be. 50 years. That's how long the humans promised to stay away. That's how long the Galactic Council thought they had to prepare for humanity's eventual return. They got 5. I was lounging in my apartment on Centauri Prime, sipping fermented nectar and scrolling through potential story leads, when my editor's urgent ping jolted me out of semi-retirement. Zarquel, get your tentacles moving. Something's happening at the Epsilon border outpost. Massive energy signatures approaching from Earth's direction. Council's scrambling emergency session. I need you there yesterday. I groaned but felt a familiar thrill race through my nerve clusters. 5 decades of relative peace had been, frankly, terrible for ratings. The galaxy had grown embarrassingly stable without humans around to disrupt everything. My career had stagnated accordingly. On my way, I transmitted back, already reaching for my press credentials and scanner. Any confirmation it's actually humans? Who else could it be? My editor shot back. Just get there. 12 hours later, I squeezed into the press gallery of a hastily convened council session. The chamber hummed with panicked energy, representatives whispering urgently to each other. Chancellor Morak's descendant of Chancellor Droll looked like he'd rather be dissolving in a black hole than presiding over this crisis. Order. I will have order. Morax banged his ceremonial staff, the traditional motion looking more like a nervous tick than an authoritative gesture. And we must approach this situation with calm deliberation. Calm. Ambassador Krell's offspring, Ambassador Krell VA, rose from her seat, all 12 eyes blinking rapidly in agitation. The humans have returned with an armada unlike anything our sensors have ever detected. We are supposed to be calm about this. I glanced at the central hologram, which displayed a real-time feed from the border monitoring stations. What I saw made my chromatophores pale to translucent white. Ships. Thousands of them. Not the clunky, retrofitted vessels humans had piloted 5 decades ago, but sleek, predatory craft that practically screamed advanced technology. They moved in perfect formation, a disciplined fleet that bore no resemblance to the chaotic human expeditions of the past. The Council sent a hail 30 minutes ago, reported Admiral Zix of the Galactic Defense Force. We have just received their response. The hologram shifted to display a human, but not like any human I'd reported on before. This one wore a sharp black uniform adorned with minimal insignia, just a simple patch showing Earth surrounded by 7 stars. His posture was perfect, his expression neutral. "Greetings, Galactic Council," the human said, his voice unnervingly measured. "I am Admiral Thomas Bradford of the United Earth Fleet. We represent a unified human government as per your requirements for our return to galactic society." Chancellor Morax cleared his throat nervously. Admiral Bradford, humanity's self-exile was meant to last 50 standard years. It has been merely 5. The human's mouth quirked slightly, not quite a smile, but something adjacent to one. "Yes, well, humans have always been overachievers when properly motivated." "Overachievers?" spluttered Ambassador Krell VA. "You have returned with what appears to be a military armada." "Not at all," Bradford replied smoothly. "This is merely our diplomatic escort fleet, standard procedure for United Earth representatives traveling beyond our solar system." I furiously typed notes. The transformation was astounding. Gone was the bumbling, disorganized species that had scandalized the galaxy. In their place stood something altogether more concerning. "We request permission to send a diplomatic delegation to present our credentials," Bradford continued. "We believe you will find humanity has made the necessary adjustments to qualify for galactic membership." Chancellor Morax conferred quickly with his advisors. Permission granted for a small delegation. 3 representatives only. They will be scanned for weapons. Bradford nodded. "Understood. They will arrive shortly." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in uproarious debate. I slipped out, using my press access to position myself near the arrival bay. If humanity had truly transformed in just 5 years, I wanted a front-row seat to whatever came next. I didn't have to wait long. A sleek shuttle detached from the main fleet and docked with surprising precision. 3 humans emerged, 2 females and 1 male, all wearing the same black uniforms as Bradford, moving with synchronized precision that made the honor guard of Regelian warriors look positively sloppy by comparison. "Welcome to Galactic Council headquarters," said the receiving official, a Valerian whose cranial foliage trembled slightly. "If you will follow me." "Thank you," said the lead human, a tall woman with dark skin and short silver hair. "I am Ambassador Olivia Frost. My colleagues are Science Attaché Dr. Philip Martinez and Security Chief Hannah Takeda." I followed at a respectful distance as they were escorted to the council chamber, noting how differently they carried themselves compared to humans of the past. No gawking at alien species. No inappropriate jokes. No stumbling in the variable gravity sections. Just smooth, confident professionalism. It was, frankly, unnerving. Once inside the chamber, Ambassador Frost took center position before the council. Up close, I could see fine lines around her eyes, suggesting she was middle-aged by human standards, though humans aged so rapidly it was hard to tell. "Esteemed representatives," she began, "I thank you for receiving us. Humanity appreciates the opportunity you gave us 50 years ago to reflect and reorganize." 5 years, corrected Chancellor Morax. "It has been 5 years, not 50. Frost smiled politely. "From your perspective, yes. From ours, it has been 50. A confused murmur swept through the chamber. I leaned forward, fascinated. "Explain," demanded Ambassador Krell VA. The human scientist, Martinez, stepped forward. "With pleasure. Upon our withdrawal from galactic society, humanity redirected all resources toward solving our fragmentation issues. We achieved planetary unification within 6 months. Nothing motivates humans like external pressure. I nearly dropped my datapad. 6 months to unify a planet that had been fractured for millennia? Once unified," Martinez continued, "we recognized that 5 years would be insufficient to reach the developmental benchmarks required for galactic reintegration. So we adjusted our temporal frame of reference." "Meaning?" Chancellor Morax looked lost. "We accelerated certain key Earth orbits using gravitational manipulation," Martinez said casually, as though discussing the weather. "We experienced 50 years of development, while the galaxy experienced 5. Relatively simple space-time manipulation. The chamber erupted. Several representatives shouted about laws of physics. Others demanded technical specifications. A few simply stared in horror. "You altered your planet's orbit?" asked Representative Voss's descendant, her feathers molting in distress. "That's impossible." "Not impossible," Martinez replied. "Just extremely difficult and inadvisable for most species. Fortunately, humans excel at attempting inadvisable things." Ambassador Frost raised a hand, silencing her colleague. "The technical details are available in our readmission petition. The relevant point is that humanity has spent 50 subjective years meeting and exceeding the Council's requirements. We have unified our planet, resolved our internal conflicts, and advanced our technology to appropriate levels. While developing apparent military capabilities," noted Admiral Zex, eyeing the third human suspiciously. Security Chief Takeda spoke for the first time, her voice surprisingly gentle. "The United Earth Defense Force exists primarily for protection against natural threats, asteroids, solar flares, hostile environmental phenomena. We have no interest in military conflict with galactic species." "Then why bring thousands of ships to what was supposed to be a diplomatic mission?" demanded Ambassador Krell VA. Frost smiled that unsettling human smile. "The insurance." The chamber fell silent. 50 years ago. Frost continued, "This council was prepared to exile humanity without proper consideration of our potential. We accepted that judgment temporarily because we recognized our flaws. We have corrected those flaws. We have unified. We have advanced. And we have returned, not as supplicants, but as equals." She gestured toward the massive view screen showing the human fleet. "Our ships are a reminder that while humanity accepts the value of galactic cooperation, we will never again allow ourselves to be dismissed or underestimated." I felt a chill run through my sensory appendages. The bumbling, chaotic humans who had stumbled onto the galactic stage 5 decades ago were gone. These humans were something else entirely coordinated, advanced, and unmistakably confident. Chancellor Morax seemed to realize the gravity of the situation. "The Council will need time to review your readmission petition and verify your claims of advancement." Of course, Frost nodded graciously. "We anticipated this response. To facilitate the process, we have brought gifts." At her signal, Martinez activated a holographic display showing technical schematics. For the silicon consciousness, quantum processing architecture that increases computational efficiency by 300%. For the mercantile worlds, transmutation technology that can convert common elements into rare ones. For the harmonious collective, medical nanites that can cure cellular degradation. The chamber fell into stunned silence as Martinez continued listing technological gifts tailored specifically to each major council faction's needs and interests. These weren't trinkets or curiosities, they were revolutionary advancements that some species had been researching for centuries without success. Additionally, Frost added calmly, "We have solved the Andromeda gravitational anomaly that has threatened this sector for the past 300 years. Our fleet neutralized it en route. Consider it a gesture of goodwill." I typed so frantically I nearly broke my datapad. The Andromeda anomaly had been slowly destabilizing regional space for centuries, with the Council's best scientists predicting catastrophic failure within the next 50 years. The humans had apparently fixed it as an afterthought. "These gifts," Chancellor Morax said carefully, "are extremely generous. The Council will need to evaluate them thoroughly." "Naturally," Frost replied. "We understand caution. Take all the time you need within reason. Our fleet will remain at the border as a diplomatic presence while you deliberate." The unspoken threat hung in the air. The humans weren't asking for readmission anymore. They were notifying the Council it was happening. "There is one additional matter," Frost added. "We request the immediate cessation of all covert observation of Earth and human colonies." Admiral Zix shifted uncomfortably. "I'm not aware of any such." "Please," Frost interrupted, her smile never wavering. We detected your monitoring satellites 3 years ago, our years, not yours. We left them intact as a courtesy, but that courtesy has expired. Chief Taktita has provided a detailed list to your security personnel. As the council members exchanged alarmed glances, I realized the humans had been playing a much longer game than anyone had suspected. They hadn't just been preparing to rejoin galactic society, they'd been preparing to reshape it. We will withdraw to allow your deliberations, Frost said, bowing slightly. My team will remain on station to answer any questions. We look forward to a productive relationship with the Galactic Council. As the human delegation departed, the chamber erupted into chaos. Species that had been political enemies for millennia huddled together, whispering urgently. Military representatives conferred with economic advisors. The Silicon Consciousness representatives had gone completely still, a sign they were running intensive simulations. I slipped out after the humans, catching up to them in the corridor. Ambassador Frost. Zarquel Phi, Galactic Observer. Could I get a statement from my readers? The humans paused, turning in perfect unison, a movement so synchronized it seemed rehearsed. Frost studied me for a moment, then her expression softened fractionally. Ah, yes, you reported on our first contact fiasco. Humans accept self-exile without protest. Galaxy breathes sigh of relief. This reporter wonders if we will regret it. Prescient of you. I felt my chromatophores flush with surprise. You remember a single news headline from 50 years ago? We studied everything during our isolation, Security Chief Taktita said. Every report, every analysis, every opinion piece about humanity. We wanted to understand how the galaxy viewed us, and how we needed to change that view, added Martinez. Frost gestured dismissively. You may quote me as saying, humanity returns to the galactic community not as the chaotic element we once were, but as a unified force for progress and stability. We look forward to productive cooperation with all species, provided that cooperation is based on mutual respect. I noted her words, then ventured a more pointed question. And if the Council rejects your petition? The 3 humans exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Then Frost smiled, not the diplomatic smile she'd shown the Council, but something sharper. That would be unfortunate, she said simply. But I don't think it will happen. The Council is pragmatic, and pragmatism favors accepting 50 years of human innovation rather than rejecting it. Besides, added Martinez with a casual shrug, we have already established trade relations with 17 non-Council species. The economic implications alone should convince the mercantile worlds. I stared at them, understanding dawning. You weren't just preparing to rejoin galactic society. You were preparing to operate without Council approval if necessary. Frost's smile widened fractionally. Good journalism involves looking beyond the obvious narrative, doesn't it, Zarquel Phi? Perhaps that's why your reporting caught our attention. With that unsettling observation, they continued down the corridor, leaving me clutching my datapad and realizing I'd just witnessed the most significant power shift in galactic politics since the founding of the Council itself. The Council deliberated for 3 standard days while the human fleet maintained its position at the border. I spent those days interviewing everyone I could: Council representatives, military analysts, economic forecasters. Opinion was sharply divided, but one sentiment remained consistent. No one had expected this version of humanity. On the 4th day, the Council announced its decision. Humanity would be readmitted to galactic society, with full member status and representation. The official reasoning cited their remarkable cultural and technological advancement. Unofficially, it was the only viable option. As Ambassador Frost signed the readmission protocols, I managed to secure one final question. But was this the plan all along? I asked quietly. When that human aide delivered your withdrawal message 50 years ago, was this the outcome you were working toward? Frost looked at me for a long moment, then glanced around to ensure no other reporters were within earshot. Humanity learned something valuable from our initial diplomatic failures, she said softly. The galaxy didn't fear our chaos or our cultural fragmentation. It feared our potential. So we decided to show exactly why that fear was justified and why cooperation is infinitely preferable to conflict. She straightened her immaculate uniform. When the galaxy voted to exile Earth, we didn't just accept the verdict. We used it. And now we are back, better than anyone imagined possible. Funny how things work out, isn't it? As I watched the human delegation return to their shuttle, a new reality settled over me. The galaxy hadn't exiled Earth 50 years ago. It had merely given humanity the motivation to become exactly what everyone had feared they might: a unified, technologically superior power that would never again accept second-class status in galactic affairs. My final report began, 50 years ago, the galaxy voted to exile Earth. Today, humanity returned to show us exactly why that might have been the worst strategic decision in Council history. And yet, perhaps ultimately the best for us all. After all, as humans themselves might say, keep your friends close, and those who can manipulate space-time itself closer.